We get the mic here, but I want to welcome everyone to this training and appreciate everyone coming. And we have Dan Clark, who is director of the MSU Local Government Center here to do some training with us. I think he spent most of his majority of his adult life training local government, so he's the man we need here, and appreciate him coming.
Thank you.
We'll have him give a presentation and probably open up for questions. If you have questions, then just raise your hand. I can give you a mic if needed. And I'll turn the time over to Dan. Thanks for coming.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, we'll get these handouts. You know, I was told when I was an undergraduate that if your professor doesn't show up, 20 minutes, you can go. But if it's an associate professor, do it 10 minutes. So I'm glad you guys stuck around. I don't think I'm that far off, though. So do I need this, or could I just yell at you?
Just yell.
Yeah. Oh, good, because I love to yell at people. That's why I've got kids. Did everyone get a packet? All right. Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I apologize for my tardiness. I was to training this morning, and it was going long, and I just left, so I gotta go. So we'll let other people finish talking. And thanks for the introduction. I've been at the center, the local government center, here for about 12 years or so. Before I was the director of the center, I was a mayor of a small town in Montana. So I've got a lot of local government experience. I've been working with local communities and rural communities around Montana for years. So it's a passion of mine. And I believe that the basis or the foundation of a good functioning community is a good functioning government. And that good functioning government really relies upon community members, board members like yourselves, to volunteer to provide support and deal with all the different complicated issues that local governments face. If you were to think about a county and the depth and breadth of issues that a county has to deal with, it's phenomenal. From public health and child vaccinations all the way over to bridge maintenance. The two of those so if you think about it, we're electing 3 county commissioners to deal with that breadth of information and to make decisions, to be informed about that. And so recognizing that weakness, that broad base of information they need to have, and just 3 individuals trying to make those decisions, the legislature has created this board structure where they can then appoint boards that can deal with very specific issues, and they can deliberate over them, they can get all the information, they can process it through this public process, and then make recommendations back to the county commission. So they don't necessarily have to be an experts in all the breadth and depth that they have to deal with. But they've got to know that there are people out there that they can count on, that they are trusted, that they are making their best effort to deliberate over those issues and make good recommendations. So that's kind of the idea of what we're doing with these board trainings, is trying to help build that capacity within those boards so that they can do their jobs well in serving their communities in whatever function that they've been appointed to or elected to. So what I want to do real quick is just ask, what are the boards here in the room that are represented today?
County Commission.
County Commission.
Yep. Tax Appeal.
Tax Appeal Board.
Town Council.
Town Council.
Forest Advisory Management.
Okay.
Library Board.
Library Board. That's a wild, rough group. You've ever hang out with library board members? They are nutso. Letting the secret out. All right. Oh gosh. All right. So library board. Who else? Planning.
Phillipsburg Library Board and Friends of the Library.
And Friends of the Library. So, ooh, yeah. We haven't even talked about these nonprofit boards or associations that aren't necessarily affiliated with a local government, which is a whole other interesting conversation we could maybe talk about. But, so just to be clear, because some of you, again, small town Montana, you're on like 4 boards. Some are public, some are private or not public boards, so I don't know if they're so much private. So I just want to be clear that the discussion we're going to have today is for your board service on a public board, which means if you are either elected or appointed by either the city or the county, or you're serving maybe the library board appoints a subcommittee to deliberate over on some issue, That would then be a subdivision of government, and all these topics we covered today will also apply. Now, that's not to say that if you're working with the Friends of the Library, which is a non-governmental board, that some of the things that we talk about today won't be relevant, that you can take some of those principles and apply them in that setting. But some of the other things we'll talk about, the legal issues, may not apply to your organization. If that makes sense. All right, what other boards? We have planning. Is there an airport board in the room? Conservation district?
Hospital district.
Hospital district, okay. So you're getting, it's a district, you're getting some tax dollars from the district to run the hospital. Good. Any others? How are you? Good.
I have a question. Is a 501c3 like the Granite Spay and Neuter Project?
And so,
The
so it'd be
same
a,
as a,
that would be a non-governmental board. Yeah. So they would, so there are some things that deal with non-governmental boards, but there's the same level of citizen participation and right to know don't apply to those non-governmental boards. Yeah. Not that they would, so the same expectations would not be placed on them as they would be placed on the library board. Yeah. Okay, so what I like to do when I start these out, ooh, you feel like Christmas colors today?
Sure.
Is that good? Let's go with Christmas colors. Ooh, and I even have new markers. It's so satisfying. Issues, questions. What I like to, I don't know if that's spelled right, Q-U-E-S-T, okay. How I like to run these trainings is you are taking some time out of your day, whether it's, you know, you have to unplug from Little Fortune, or if you've got to come off from work to come here, but you're taking some time today to be here, and I want to make sure that we cover issues or questions or concerns that you have through the day. So really today's agenda is going to be what you want to talk about. And there are things I want to make sure we cover, and it's likely the same things that you want to make sure we cover, but I want to make sure we get some of those on the board, and we'll go through and highlight each of those. So do you have any questions or concerns you want to make sure we cover today, like open meetings, noticing meetings, meeting agendas, bylaws, rules of procedure, code of ethics, closing meetings or executive session?
I'd like to have a clarification on publication of agendas, adequate notice. And I'd also like some discussion on the availability of minutes upon request.
Okay. So minutes request, QUE, yeah, something like that. And do we want to talk about minutes just in general? Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right, we'll cover that.
We talked about serving on multiple boards. That's an issue here. So we talk about that.
In a way, like conflict of interest or some of those things?
Yeah, or if you're on, well, if you're, on multiple boards, if there is one.
Yeah, that could or has the potential to create a conflict of interest. We can talk about that. Planning board, would it be helpful, I'm kind of looking at the county attorney here, be helpful to talk about quasi-judicial role and council members? Sometimes will find themselves in a quasi-judicial and then ex parte communication.
Yes.
Does that resonate with anyone? Does that sound?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to say quasi-judicial with a Q and a J because I don't spell quasi very well. It's always entertaining for everybody to watch it. And ex parte. Talk about that.
Also on that line, regarding elected official, a trustee, simultaneously being on two different boards.
How do you mean, like?
A trustee for a district,
Okay, yeah,
elected, and then they're sitting on
yeah.
two different.
So like if it was if there are a county commissioner also serving on the rural, or the refuse district board.
Well, I
Trustee
have
on
a
that.
trustee for the hospital district, who's also a trustee for the school district.
Okay. Is that kind of where you're getting at? So-
Yeah, but we don't, we're not trying to pin you in on any legal issues, we want to get your thoughts on it.
No, yeah, because we can talk about that. I don't know if that was necessarily reflected in,
Yeah,
so I was thinking something different with conflict of interest. Okay. Multiple boards. It's DS. Yeah, I think we can talk about that. Where, because I think there's some circumstances that it's going to be stickier than others.
I got one.
Yeah.
I'd like some discussion on official misconduct and also what procedures the people can use in order to enforce at least open meeting laws.
Okay. And this isn't relative to open meeting laws. Okay.
Commissioner work sessions,
Okay.
public involvement.
Okay. Does the city also have work sessions?
All of our meetings we
Business
can make
meetings?
decisions at all of our meetings now.
You'd have a
But I
budget
do-
work session, right?
I do have a question, like, I think Robert's Rules of Order, in those work sessions and how to get, what's a good practice for obtaining public comment and that.
Yeah, for facilitating or conducting a work session. So for those of you that aren't sure what this means, work session is going to be different than a business meeting. Some cities and counties as well, they might have a work session where they're not taking any official action, but or the city, they're saying, well, this meeting, we're just going to have this work session where we want to learn about a couple of issues. And we want to get experts in, we want to hear comments from the public. It's a little less formal. It's just fact-finding, getting their head wrapped around this. And they may have a series of work sessions that lead to, they say, okay, now we're ready to move this on to an official agenda to take action on it. So that's what we talk about with work sessions and how they work, how to structure those. But yeah, we can touch on that a little bit. What time does everybody want to get home today?
Last call.
Let's go. Just as long as they're in before last call. All right.
Also, another one that goes along with that is powers of the chair, especially for a small board chair.
Powers of the chair, yeah, we can talk about that. Yep. Anything else, Burden? That will get us through at least till 7 or 8 tonight. Then we'll see where it goes from there. All right. Everyone's got a handout, right? No, you came in, you need a handout?
Yes.
Anyone else? You need a handout? You're good? She's gonna take notes to that.
Yeah.
Ask some hard questions later on.
She's just creeping back there.
That's right. All right, let's,
One thing on work sessions, would you also expand that conversation to include budget preparation?
This is gonna be all about.
all right, let's start out. You got that obnoxious green piece of paper. Do what you want with that. I think behind that, so there's two packets. There's two pockets in the folder, and in those pockets are packets. We've labeled them right packet and left packet. If you pull out the right-hand packet from the right-hand pocket, and the first page, L or R1 for right hand. See how we did all that? It all makes sense. What I want to start out with, and think of this as like we're building a pyramid or something. We're building a house. There's foundational things that we want to make sure we cover. And my intent with the foundational issues is that as time goes on, if you can just refer back to or think about what's a foundational principle of good governance. And if you can think through that process of what's good governance, you may determine the answer, or figure out the answer to your question. A lot of our code, a lot of the structure of government is based on the concept, or our democracy is based on the idea or ideals of good governance. Right? So let's review those really quickly, and I think that might help you get some sort of a foundational appreciation for when you step in the room for a public board meeting, you're taking off whatever hat you're wearing. You're taking off your citizen hat, you're taking off your business person's hat, employee hat, or whatever you might be having in your other life. You're putting on a different hat. You're putting on your public service hat. And the role that you're playing as a public servant is different than the role you play as a private business person or a private individual. Right? Here you're in a role where you're looking at issues that affect everybody. And how do we make these decisions that govern our community? So by thinking about these principles will help you as you kind of create a framework by which you look at and deliberate on those public issues. When was the last time do you have a town pump in town?
Gas station, 2 gas stations.
Gas station, or you got a little grocery store or something? When was the last time you walked into the grocery store and you have a notice there on the grocery store door that says, notice, public hearing on our budget. Come and comment on our grocery store budget. Why not? It's private. It's none of our business, right? Our relationship with the grocery store is transactional, right? I go in, if I find a product I want, I will select the product and I will give them cash for that product. It's transactional. Is that the same kind of relationship that your government has with you? What is it the government provides for you? What are some of the things the government provides?
Services.
Protection, so public safety, certain services, water, sewer, garbage collection, if that's what's going on in this area.
Controls our money.
So what we've done as a community, so if you want to think of it this way, we have come together as a community. As a county, or as, think of it in a general sense, as a county or as a municipality, and said, look, there are certain things that we can't do by ourselves. I can't provide public safety. I can't provide hospital services by myself. So we're going to pool our resources together through taxation to deliver certain services that we can't do individually. So if you think of it that way, it's a different relationship. It's a different responsibility that you have wearing that public hat, right? That there is a trust that the public's placed in me in whatever position I am serving in to provide an essential service they can't get anywhere else. If I don't want to get gas at one gas station, I got a choice. I can go somewhere else. But if you don't like the transportation system or the road system that the county provides for you, you can't go to a competitor. Or if I don't like the water delivery system I get from Phillipsburg, I'm going to go with my competitor, their competitor. And I'll show them, right? It's not an option, right? So that's the role that we play here. It's a little bit different than the public one. So I just get a little, you can imagine, I get a little annoyed when I hear politicians say, we just need to run this government more like a business. I say, you go right ahead, because in 6 months you'll be in jail. Right? It does not work like a business. It's not designed, its structure, its function, its purpose is not designed to be a business. And you can't run it like a business. Right? So, all right, so with that said, with my passion, if there's these 5 principles. So legitimacy and voice. As you think about your role, how do we engage the public? How do we engage the people that we serve? On the hospital district, right? Because my guess, it's more than just Phillipsburg. Is it just the county, or is it a section of the county?
Countywide.
Countywide, the entire county.
One isolated geographical area.
Okay. So how do I engage the citizens that I am serving relative to medical service in our community? How do I keep them informed, and how do I hear and listen to them? And that all people in this district have a voice. And I should listen to that voice. They all have equal standing before me. We can't say, no, you just live on the wrong side of the tracks. You have, or you're brand new. You just moved to town. You have less of a voice and less credibility and credentials in our community than someone that's been here for 4 generations. We'll listen to them and take their word over you. And that's not how this system works. They're just as much vested in there, because it doesn't matter your longevity in the community. What matters is I'm a member of this community and I'm paying into this system for you to provide me a service, regardless of how long I've lived here. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Said by the guy who just moved here.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, right. So I've lived here for almost 25 years and I'm still the newbie, right? I'm still the new guy. Yeah.
Could you clarify the point? Is it the people's business, or is it the county commissioner's business? The law says it's the people's business, and the commissioner or public official is supposed to do the bidding of the people.
Yeah, in a way, and I just want to qualify that though, right? So so you come up to a county commission meeting and say, well, this is what I want. They're not encumbered to say, okay, we'll do that. They've got to think about what do you want, but what does he want, she wants, you know, what is everybody, so what's the best? And this is the challenge. What's the best for the most? And that's the challenge here. That's why all of you on boards are serving, trying to figure out how do we work through the sausage making of governance and make some recommendation or make a decision if you are empowered to do that. What's the best for the most? Because there, you know, it's like every other thing in life, right? It's a bell curve. Right? It's just because I have one extreme end of the bell curve yelling at me all day doesn't necessarily mean I have to comply with their wishes or their demands. But I need to take it, I need to take it into consideration with everything else. And I need to weigh and balance both ends plus the middle. And that's where I'm trying to make good decisions. So don't feel disenfranchised that your voice isn't necessary when you make a comment or a plea that is not necessarily translated into policy. Because that should all be taken into consideration. And we're trying to balance it all out. Does that
Should be taken into consideration, but they should not exceed the limits of their delegated authority.
True. Yeah, I won't argue that. Yeah. But they have certain responsibilities in their sideboards. With all of you, you have sideboards that you got to operate within. Right? Stay in the lane. When you get out of the lane, you end up in the ditch. So we don't want that. So and part of this discussion here today is figuring out what's the lane. Where's the lane? How do I stay in the lane? All right. I took my glasses off. But the other one was consensus orientation. That the work that you're doing as a board is you're working together and trying to figure out what are those ends, those extremes. What is not just what are my issues and interests or the friends and family that I have they're influencing, but what are the people on the other side of the tracks, so to speak? What do those other people think and feel? What's important to them? And how do we make sure we're balancing all those interests and needs and try to build a consensus around that? I'm a little concerned when I hear boards that it's always a 3-2, 3-2, 3-2 vote. It means that they're not working, it could mean that they're not working hard enough to understand what the minority value or point is. And that they say, hey, we've got a majority, we're just going to, and yeah, you can do that. But I think really on this local level, it's better for us to try to figure out how do we find a consensus. Consensus-oriented decision-making has a much more durable and lasting effect. When you get just a margin, thin margin of a majority, and you push that through, it can be easily unraveled if there's a change of dynamics on the board. So just let that filter as you think about what's going on the federal level, right? That we just get that we're going to have this ping-ponging back and forth for some time. And that's not necessarily a principle of good governance. I think it's where we need to work together, try to find solutions that are more durable and aren't just one side of the fence or the other side of the fence. Yes.
But when you go with consensus, though, what if you never can come to that?
Yeah, and at some point you just got to say, look, we've done all we can, we've explored all, we've got to make a decision, we've got to move on. I think which leads us to, we're getting to that here in number 3. But first we'll get to the strategic vision. It's much more helpful for your board, the county, the hospital district, whatever, that you have some sort of a vision. Where are we going? Where do we hope to take this board, this district, so that the decisions you're making, all those little decisions you're making along the line, have some sort of a grand outcome. Otherwise, they're just random, right? It's whoever showed up at the meeting today yelling at me. It's like, well, we'll go that way, right? It's much better and easier for everyone involved to say, this is our vision, this is our goal, this is what we're working for, right? And so if somebody comes and comments and say, yeah, but how does that fit with our goal and our aspiration as a community or as a county? How does that fit? And it allows the public to engage and say, well, gosh, maybe it doesn't. Then how do I, and we can either debate whether that's the right vision or not, but that's part of the process, right? Through a robust discussion, we can decide what do we want as a community and how are we going to get there, and then we've entrusted you to be making decisions and facilitating the process to get us there. It makes it easier for you to justify the decisions you're making. If you don't have that type of vision, it's just random, right? Tomorrow we make a different decision, just cuts. A different dynamic. Someone talked to me just before the meeting and I changed my mind. So it helps you have a strategic vision, it helps you with the decision making. So being responsive comes back to that. If you can't come to consensus, you still need to be responsive, effective, and efficient. You can't just keep kicking the can down the road. You can't say, well, that's going to be hard, and I don't want to do it because it's going to be hard, or people aren't going to like me. I don't know where you are with your your infrastructure. But a lot of local governments, for years, kicked the can down the road dealing with their infrastructure. It's like, gosh, it's going to be hard to deal with this water system. We're getting water delivered. Yeah, it's leaking. We're getting more leaks each year. But gosh, let's just put that off because we're going to have to deal with grants. We're going to have to deal with raising rates. We're going to put in meters and people can get upset. And it's just easier to put that off until a future generation. Well, 60 years later, when you're losing 6 million gallons out of your water system, using 4 through your delivery system, you realize, oh gosh, we're completely collapsed. And now that is a big ask. You have to go, I'm kind of telling my story. I assumed the position as a mayor, and they had put in the water system in the 30s, had a useful life of 40 years. So this is 2002? So we were living on borrowed time. The flat rate of $15 a month. That wasn't enough to cover operations, much less maintenance, depreciation, and replacement. So that was a big nut I had to bite into when I got into that office, say, I can't kick that can down the road. We're falling apart here. We had a business that came into town that had a high water requirement. We had the water available. They were going to bring 17 high-paying jobs to the community. They were well known for investing in local communities. They liked to find small rural communities because they could make a difference there. They had a strong ethic that was right in line with our ethic. They said, we love this little community. We want to invest here, and all we need is water. See, we got tons of water. Great, where is it? It's leaking into the ground. We couldn't deliver their demand for water. We had the water available, but we couldn't get it to them. And they said, we can't afford to repair your infrastructure. And that was one of the consequences the community realized, oh gosh, we blew it. And they ended up moving to another community, setting up shop there. We lost that economic opportunity because we failed as a community to do the hard things, to take on those challenges and be unpopular. No, don't raise those rates, and they're not listening to me. Well, but gosh, there's a reality here, right? Water systems don't last forever. We've got to make these strategic investments over time. So, okay, I digress. Did I digress? Was that digressing? All right. So, just buckle up. You're going to get a lot of stories. So that's accountability, transparency. I love this question. I get a question about once a year, twice a year from a city clerk or some other. Sometimes it's from a county clerk recorder. They call and say, well, the commission or the council was wondering, could they vote by secret ballot? I always ask that. Everybody laughs. It's like, what? So why would that be a bad idea?
It's not transparent.
And why is transparency important? Yeah. Whose money are you spending? You're spending our money. We want to see the decisions. We want to see what's the logic behind it. What's your justification for making that decision? Let us help determine whether that's the right decision or not. And if it's not, and we don't like the decision, the direction you're going, we can vote you out. We can't hold you accountable for your decisions unless you're transparent with them. So those go hand in glove. All right, and then finally, there's equity and rule of law. We treat people, we don't treat you any different. You don't come in and say, well, how long have you lived in this community? We're going to give you only 3 points for value, where someone else has been 4 generations, you get 10 points for value, right? That doesn't work either. So everyone's treated equitably. You all pay into the system. And then the rule of law, that we have laws, we have rules that we follow. And here's the deal. This system is not designed to deal with the what if. What if someone doesn't follow the rules? It's all the legislature could do to create laws, and they've done a good job. If you look at the Montana Code Annotated, it sits on the shelf. It's a series of books, 90 titles. It fits on the shelf about this far. Is that right? It's probably all on your computer, so yeah, whatever, Dan. I haven't seen it for years. It's a big chunk. And they're just contemplating what is the rules, and how do you keep on the road, right? What's the lane? They're just defining what the lane is. And they haven't spent a lot of time trying to say, well, if you don't follow the rules, Commissioner, this is the consequence. Right? It's just expected, and it's implied that you're going to follow the rules. The whole thing falls apart really quick when people don't. And that's a real challenge. So you got to make sure you know and understand these are the rules, and we're going to comply with the rules. And we're going to do it in good faith. And I tell you all this, I was working with a community. They had a breakdown between the mayor and the council over an issue, and they were at an impasse, couldn't find consensus. And so the next meeting, the council showed up with the mayor, they did the Pledge of Allegiance, sat down, And immediately, a council member said, I move to adjourn, got a second, they got it, walked out of the room. They didn't do anything on the agenda. They didn't pay the bills, they didn't have the hearing on the water project, they didn't do anything. So the mayor said, well, you gotta at least pay the bills. Call a special meeting and have them come back just to pay the bills. Same thing happened, moved to adjourn, and walked out. They did that for 6 months. They did not conduct any official business for 6 months. We went there with their insurance company, MMIA. We sat down with both the mayor and council. We helped them understand, you have a duty. Duty by law. The law says you need to do these things, council, and mayor, you need to do these things. And yes, there are times where you're going to have to overlap and make a decision and decide and come to some sort of consensus. That's your duty. And the classic, I got this response from a council member, said, yeah, we don't believe in that part of the law. What on earth? And then, so if we can't agree on the law, so you as a lawyer, it's like, oh my goodness. And then here's the irony. The thing they couldn't agree on was the appointment of their city attorney. So they're operating with no legal counsel because the city attorney said, yeah, you guys are a bag of crazy. I'm retiring. I'm out of here. And that's the meltdown was over the appointment of the council wanted one person and the mayor wanted someone else. So how do they resolve this? The citizens. Now this is the, think about this. That's the recourse. That's to fix this. The citizens had to mount a recall petition. Let's just imagine someone has to sit down and write up a petition, get it legally reviewed to make sure it's going to meet the muster of the legal community, then go around town getting people to sign this, spending the money as the public money to put this on the ballot, and everybody have to show up at wherever the polling stations and vote to get rid of these yahoos. Think about how much energy is spent in a community doing something that should not be done. Think about that energy being put into something more aspirational or impactful. If all that volunteer time was down in your school system, helping your little kids learn how to read and do their math, oh no. So, they eventually recalled the mayor and 3 of the council members, and they had to start all over again. And as it turned out, they hired the city attorney that the council wanted, who then ended up getting in all sorts of litigation. I don't know, she had like 3 or 4 lawsuits with this city before she was run out of town. All right, any questions about, so if you think about that, right, what is my role here? How do I think about the many? How do I make sure we're hearing the voices, that we're looking for consensus? We have some sort of vision. Where are we going? What are the decisions we're making? Where are they leading us to? And how do we articulate to the public? Maybe you'll find the public more engaged because they can see where we're headed and how they can contribute to that outcome. There's rules that we need to follow, that we treat people equitably, that we're not kicking the can down the road. So those are the things that there's sometimes you got to deliberate. There's sometimes you say, you know what, we just can't keep deliberating forever. We've got to see this is what they couldn't agree. But if they follow the law, somebody's got to hold their nose and say, okay, we'll have to go, we'll do it. All right. All right, so let me use this other one. What was the most significant thing that happened in the state of Montana in 1972? Oh. Yes, we adopted a new constitution. Well, state constitution. We didn't necessarily adopt it. That's when we held the convention, the constitutional convention. It was adopted, I think, finalized in '74. They had some lawsuits and ratified by the public. But by and large, we'll say '72 is when it all started. Now, what do we find in the Constitution? What are some things contained in our state constitution that are of note, particularly relates to you folks?
Open reading and public participation.
Okay, so an articulation, right? In this Constitution, we articulate these are the rights of citizens of Montana. Montanans have certain rights now that they've enumerated within their Bill of Rights, so to speak, right? And it also explains what the responsibilities are of government. The structure and framework of government, we have a legislative branch, we have an executive branch, we have a judicial branch. How are they elected? What are their qualifications? Those are some of the just general guidelines and outline of what a government should look like. Here's the responsibilities of government, here are the rights of the citizens, some of those aspirational things. Not a very long publication. If it was in a little booklet this big, It would fit in my back pocket, 72 pages, a little pocket version of it. Do you have it in your pocket there? Here's my Constitution. Yeah, he's probably got it. So it's not a big, there it is, right there. He's got the Constitution. We got it right there. So it fits in your pocket. It's 72 pages, right?
About,
Ish, something like that.
well, it's actually, yeah.
Something like that. All right, so when the Constitution's written, ratified, and completed, where does it go next? What do we do with it next? Who gets it next, and what do they do with it? The Historical Society? Say it again? The legislature. I'm gonna go with orange. So it goes down to the legislature. What do they do with it?
Debate.
Just read it?
They pass codes to enforce it.
Yeah, so they sit there and say, okay, there's a lot of things it says in there, in that, if you read the Constitution, it says a lot of instances where it says, as may be provided by a law, right? Which basically, they're kicking it down to the legislature, so you need to create laws that define whatever this is, right? So in our case, what we're going to talk about here in a few minutes are these constitutional rights, the right to know, right to participate, the right to privacy. They are single sentences, just a sentence in our Bill of Rights that says, look, this is a value we have, this is a right that we have. Now, legislature, you create laws that help us understand the boundaries, the framework in which we operate in. When am I violating your right or allowing you to exercise your right? Right? What does that look like? So they have to create laws and a structure and a framework so we know when we're operating properly. All right, so legislature, that's where we get the Montana Code, right? This big bunch of books with lots of words in it. Then it gets kicked down to us, right? On the local level. Fortunately, the legislature, as of yet, has not decided to drill down and get all up in your grill and tell you exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and why to do it. They basically said you have authority, you have power, and you've got to satisfy certain aspects of the Constitution, but you've got to figure it out locally with your local policies. Right? So you create local policies that decide when the meetings are for the county commission, where they're held, what time they start, what our agenda looks like, when the chair is not available, who then conducts the meetings. How's the agenda prepared? Who takes the minutes? Where do we store the minutes? How do we store them? All that stuff, right? You have an expectation to create records. Now, how are we going to do it? How do we operationalize it? So that's between these two here, powers and authorities, and then here is how we operationalize it on the local level. The hospital board's rules of procedure and how they conduct their business may be completely different than the planning board or the library board, and that's fine, right? They're all going to be different because you're going to meet your particular board's needs and your jurisdiction's needs. And so far, that's been working for us. So we create these local policies. Now, back to our handouts. On the left-hand packet, turn to L1. And this is where we want to just quickly review. I always say quickly review, and it takes me 45 minutes. So if you ever hear me say, let's take some time on this, oh, buckle up. It will be all day long. All right. The Constitution, Article 2 in our Constitution is our Bill of Rights. There's a bunch of sections there. I want to just focus on Section 8 through 10. Section 8, the right to participate, says the public has the right to expect governmental agencies to afford such reasonable opportunity for citizen participation in the operation of the agencies prior to final decision as may be provided by law. There it is, right? That's an indicator for the legislature. You need to create laws to ensure the public has the right to participate on anything that and give them a reasonable opportunity before final action. Now, let me come back to this pre-1972. Where was the seat of power in Montana pre-1972?
Sixth floor of the Hennessy Building. Yeah, beautiful.
So there was a tremendous amount of power and influence coming out of Butte. And the public, the citizens of Montana, were getting increasingly anxious and frustrated because they felt like they were being cut out of the decision-making process that affected their lives. It was opaque. They didn't know how to engage. They would go to Helena to the legislative sessions where they realized the decision's already made. The fix is in. That's why the pendulum, I believe, the pendulum swung so far over to, oh no. As a citizen now, we have a right to observe and participate in this government process, in the decision-making process. Okay, so the pendulum swung way over. That's why we're reading such strong language. There are few, I don't know of many other states that have such strong language when it comes to right to participate and right to know. So let's look at the next one, the right to know. No person shall be deprived of the right to examine documents or to observe the deliberations of all public bodies. Is that ambiguous there about the public bodies? Which ones should be observed? All. All public bodies. Now, legislatures giving themselves an out. That's a whole other discussion we won't get into. All public bodies or agencies of state government and its subdivisions, except in cases in which the demand of individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure. Next one says, the right of individual privacy is essential to the well-being of a free society and shall not be infringed without showing of a compelling state interest. Very interesting. Those last two rights are fascinating to me because you as a citizen have a right to know, but also as a citizen you have a right to privacy. There may be times where you have what you would consider a privacy right, and the public says, but I have a right to know, and now we're going to have a conflict of two constitutional rights. We have to balance those rights and decide, is there a compelling state interest for the public to know someone's private information? Or is that private information outweigh the public's right to know? So somebody's got to make a decision about whose rights are we going to violate, the individuals or the public's. Yes, sir?
Could you clarify the term adequate public notice? And then also on the minutes, as I read it and understand it, the minutes should be available for public inspection upon request. The commissioners here don't think that they should be available to the public until they've approved the minutes.
Right.
And adequate notice kind of goes back and forth in terms of, it seems with the evolution of time now, the minutes or the meeting agenda should, at the very least, be published in the newspaper. The other thing is, with the advent of the internet, there should be a notice on the internet of the meeting, and we should be expanding the definition from posting in 3 public places in the mail. Publication in the newspaper and the internet publication is probably what should prevail at this time. And
You would think.
I would think.
But law hasn't changed on that. But we'll talk about it. So hang on, because you've read my script.
That's what I thought you were just discussing.
No, we're going there. We're going there right now. Yeah. So, on this adequate notice, so they use the term reasonable opportunity to participate, is what this says in the Constitution. Now, if you look down the page to the kind of the bottom there of L1, it says public participation governed to ensure the guidelines adopted. Here it says each agency, public agency, right? Each agency, if you look up, there's a definition, and usually if you're hanging out in the code very often, there's going to be a section that might talk about, so here's a section on this particular thing. Usually at the beginning they'll have a section called definitions because words mean something. So if we're going to use this word agency, we need to give it a definition so everybody knows what we're talking about. So in this case, an agency means any board, bureau, commission, department, authority, or officer of the state or local government authorized to make rules, or by law to make rules, determine contested cases, or enter into contracts. So when you read that word agency, that's the definition they're using in this particular part. Now, you say, well, we're not entering into contracts and we're not arbitrating contested cases. Yes, that's true. However, in other parts of the law, it defines more explicitly that you on boards have to comply with these laws as well. So, if that came up in your head. Now, jumping back to where it says each agency, so now on 23103, shall develop procedures for permitting and encouraging the public to participate in the agency's decisions that are of significant interest to the public. The procedures must ensure adequate notice, as you mentioned, and assist public participation before final agency action is taken that is of significant interest to the public. So, the legislature, in my opinion, my humble non-legal opinion, it's okay here to use some ambiguous terms, kind of flowery language that that's kind of all-encompassing. But when you get down here, it would be helpful if we had more a direct language. So here the legislature had an opportunity, because it says up above that we need to provide reasonable opportunity for the citizens to participate. And then in the law, where there should be clarification, they say we need to give you adequate notice. Well, now the question is, what is adequate? So you're thinking, adequate. What's adequate? What may be adequate to you? You look like a guy that loves Twitter, right? Just tweet it out, give me 4 hours and I'll be there. Now, because you're always connected to your phone, but you, it's like, oh dear, I need a postcard, I need you to come knock on my door, give me 2 weeks notice, I gotta rearrange my schedule, that's adequate for me, 4 hours adequate for you. So if I'm a county commissioner or city council member, I don't want to violate anyone's constitutional right. I want to make sure they have adequate notice and that they have opportunity to participate. But I don't know where that line is. It's ambiguous. Is it 4 hours? Is it 2 weeks? So who am I going to ask?
Yeah.
You're going to ask your legal counsel. You'll go to the county attorney or city attorney and say, hey, tell me, what's the interpretation when the legislature uses the terms adequate notice? And he'll say, oh, I don't know either. So let me call some of my other lawyer buddies. And so all these city and county attorneys start calling each other, what does it mean when they say adequate notice? And they go, I don't know. And no one, so there's a couple of ways we can resolve this, but no one wants to willingly violate a constitutional right, but we just don't know where the line is. So how do you solve that concern? How do you solve that question? Where is the line? Who's going to tell us the line? So we know, yes, we're complying with it. No, we're not complying with it. Who do we go? Who do we ask? How do we get there? Well, you could, but then again, you're going to have 60 different, every person you ask is going to have a different,
District court rulings,
Jay.
AG.
So 2 ways. One, you can go to, we'll start with the Attorney General. Well, I'll just say the Attorney General for an opinion. So in this case, that's what happened. I can't remember which city or which county went to the Attorney General and said, dude, we're so screwed here. We don't know where the line is. Tell us the line. And the Attorney General came back and said, what did they say? I don't know. You don't know? I don't know either. But he had the authority to make the call, right? He's got the authority to make the call, and the call was 48 hours. 48 hours would be sufficient notice before final agency action. However, right, clarify ambiguity. However, that amount of time should increase with the relative importance of the decision being made. There we go again. So we haven't drilled down on that yet, but that's the idea. 48 hours. Now you say, well, is that business hours? Does that include a weekend? He said 48 hours, right? So knowing that, how do we then draft our local policies? If you want to say it's 48 hours, not including weekends, if we're going to have a Monday morning meeting of the county commission, we're going to make sure that this notice 48 hours before the weekend. So we're going to have to notice it Wednesday at 5, by 5, right? So now the public has adequate 48-hour notice. That's our choosing. You have that ability that we're going to put greater expectations. In Granite County, that's where I'm at, right? In Granite County, that's how we roll. We're going to, but that's entirely up to the commission and out to the community. What is it that is your standard? And then let's create this standard. We'll make it into a policy. And then everybody can be held accountable for it. Then you know, as a citizen, what to expect. They know how to conduct themselves. And yeah, if no one shows up at 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to spend $2.3 million. And this is a true story. There was a county out there that was going to, I think it was like $1 or $1.6 million. They had this big debate about buying the private hospital. The county was going to buy the old building. The hospital went defunct, or they built a new one, and then they had this old one. We're going to buy it and make it an administrative building. Big debate, big fight. The whole community was split. They noticed at 5 o'clock, they're going to have a Monday morning meeting at 8 o'clock to make the decision. How do you think that went over? They said, but hey, we followed the law. They said, yeah, you did technically, but really. So, right? So, you've got to decide, folks, how you want to roll. What is the values that we want to operate by? Right? So they made the decision, and then they just ducked for cover as they got pelted by rocks and pitchforks and all that stuff came to town. All right. So AG pays, the other one was who?
District Court rulings, we had one for Judge Meiser here, that was a school case where 48 hours was insufficient, so I've been telling them that my other son was 72 hours and you do it.
Oh, so you had a local,
Yeah,
so has that been appealed yet?
no, that issue is not appealed,
It's just sitting there.
yeah.
Interesting. I've heard that. Yeah, so then we have the court. Now I usually say, well, the Supreme Court's going to be the one that's going to, that's why I want it to be appealed. I want this to be finally resolved because you always have that question. Well, but what's the Supreme Court going to say? Or, so here's the deal. The Attorney General's opinions stand as law. They stand as the law of the land until either the courts rule that that was inconsistent or the legislature changes the law. It'd be so much easier if the legislature just said, look, here's the standard, and we're done, right? It's been since 1974. I don't expect it to change, so there we sit. So for you, so back to the adequate notice, at least we know 48 hours. And then the law also says that you need to have 2 places of notice. And they've got to be a physical posting board. You likely have a policy for the county, so we're going to notice here at the courthouse at a posting board, and then maybe somewhere else, a physical location.
Oh, post office.
Post office. There's our 2 physical locations. Now, satisfying the law. But, let's go back. Let me get my glasses on, put my markers down. I got too many things going on here, folks. It's all this management of stuff. All right. Let me go back and just read this, and I want to highlight a few words that you probably didn't pick up on. It took me like 4 years, and I thought, oh my goodness. I read into this a whole other layer. Each agency shall develop procedures, right, local policies, for permitting, and, what's the next word? And encouraging. Permitting to me says, date, time, place, this is where we're meeting, and we're going to unlock the door, right? That's where we're going to permit you to come in. We're telling you where, when, and how to come in. But what's the next one is an expectation the legislature's placed on you to encourage participation. Now let's keep going. Encouraging the public to participate in the agency's decisions that are of significant interest to the public. The procedures must ensure adequate notice and, what's the next word? Assist the public participation before final agency action. So there's 2 places there. To me, in my mind, I'm saying there's an expectation that the legislature's placed on all of us to engage, to encourage, to do more than just what is statutory required. Which is funny because they put that in the law. But anyway. So you've satisfied, and so that's where we often, so let's brainstorm. What could be a couple things that the county and your boards could do that would meet that encourage part?
Well, we actually do some of those.
Yeah, what would they be?
We send out about, it's right at 100, it's a little under 100 emails of the agenda to specific individual people.
And anyone can sign up for it?
Anybody in this room, simply let us know and boom, they're going to get it in their inbox. Second thing we do is it's on the website.
Yep.
And if it's a significant issue, we set it back up far enough that there's a lot of public discussion about, okay, remember this is a really important issue, we want to get people there. So,
and it may be a series of meetings that you're having before you make a final agency action too.
Yeah.
But there have plenty of opportunity to weigh in. Yeah. Yeah. So those would be things I think are great brainstorming things. Some jurisdictions will have a social media accounts. They might have an Instagram or a Facebook or something that they'll push things out on. That's a whole other thing that you've got to create a policy around. It's more than just creating an account and say, yeah, we're going to start.
and Dan, finally, I was
Facebook.
trying to remember the final thing, but in the last 5 or 6 years, we've tried to have meetings in different times and different locations in the county to
accommodate.
It's an issue that is really for Drummond. Well, we'll try to have it in the Drummond area, and that has some success, but
Yeah.
not what we thought.
So yeah. But try to have some thinking about how do we accommodate, how do we find ways in which we can encourage people to participate and engage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going on that premise, okay, so there's a regular meeting, place, and time. That's the regular one. Okay, so that, you put it on the internet. But then there's a special meeting, just like Bill said, at different places in the county. This is Granite County, and there's a lot of people that don't even have a computer. They depend on the local newspaper. And I would think if somebody realizes that every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, they're here at the courtroom, and that's where the commissioners meet. And then supposedly, the same thing happens the times they do everything. But all of a sudden, something's changed. Do you know how many times people showed up here thinking it's here, but they haven't in another place? And the other part is interest to the public. Who decides what the public thinks is interesting? You notice I record a lot of the meetings. I've been to meetings where even I was surprised that the place got packed because of word of mouth. The library came last week, and I was surprised that many people were there. It's apparently word of mouth or special invite. But what about the people that don't get a special invite?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts and comments. Great discussion. I think you need to have that. That's something you guys got to figure out locally. How are we going, what are our expectations for noticing? Right? And so that's a discussion that you can have and decide, and you create a policy and then comply with the policy. So that's a debate. I'm not going to arbitrate what's right or wrong because all of it's on that encouraging side. There's no wrong, but it's always degrees of better. So it's at what degree? Because all of that takes effort and time. So we're trying to balance effort, time with, so it's all a balancing it. So the other comment she made, who determines? So who determines what is of significant interest to the public? The public. They decide, right? So they decide. And so the role of the government is to make sure that people know what's going on and they decide whether they want to show up. Now here's another one I love. We have no fire districts in the room, right?
What?
Good. Fire districts?
They were invited. They were invited. They didn't want to.
I love, because I always pick on fire districts. So a fire district board, I love this. Oh, I could have torn that off. Oh, well, we'll get to it. This is the best. When you see on a fire district agenda that's posted at Fire District Hall and at the post office, it says, right? As a citizen, what does this mean to you?
They're getting a fire truck.
It could be they're buying a fire truck, it could be they're painting a fire truck, they're trying to repair the fire truck, getting tires for the fire truck. We don't know what this means. Do you feel like you're adequately noticed with something as vague as fire truck?
I think
So-
that all depends on the size of the community.
So just think. So just think on your side as a person creating an agenda that there should be sufficient information on your agenda that the public would feel informed and know, okay, I can decide, I can choose whether I want to participate or not. If they truly wanted to purchase a fire truck, what I would suggest, it should say, yeah, the consideration of, the approval of, the discussion around, or, the purchase of a 1999 2.5-ton international tanker truck, right, for $49,000. Now, with that level of detail, I would feel adequately noticed. I can choose then whether I want to participate or not. But this, if you just had fire truck on there and then you spent $50,000 and no one knew, do you think the public would have an argument, a case, if they went to the court saying, hey, I don't feel like I was adequately noticed, but this is all you told me and you just spent $50,000 of our tax dollars?
Yes, they would. A little more detail. I think if you put a purchase of a new fire truck, would probably sufficient.
That might be just inside. I'm always on that side. What are you hiding from? What are you hiding from?
But there's people that are inadequately trained as to what to do. That's part of the problem.
That's why you're here, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So, and I love this other one. I don't want to say anything because I don't want it to get on Facebook.
I don't want too many people to show up.
Right. Because it's a hassle.
Yes.
It'd be so much easier if the public weren't involved. Well, then go get a business and do that, right? Then the public's not involved. That's the whole point, is the public should be involved. So get out ahead of it. Don't try to hide from it, because that's just going to create cranky people. We don't want cranky people. Be transparent, be open, say, look, I've got nothing to hide. I want you to come. They say, yeah, stay away, quit bugging me. Quit emailing me all the time. That's what you want. So that's what you're trying to look at, is how do we build that public trust. So here's another thing. You are expecting, so now we have our whole fire truck, the dollar amount of all the blah, blah, blah on the fire truck. And somebody posted on Facebook that the fire district's buying a ladder truck. With the 2 driving wheels, the whole big 9 yards, and that's out there on Facebook, and everyone's wound up. They're going to spend $100,000 to buy this big old ladder truck, and we don't have a building higher than 2 stories in the whole county, right? That's what they heard. And you come to that meeting, and what's going to be there? Everybody, they're ticked. They're angry. They're upset. What are you doing? You guys are incompetent. What fools we have, right? We've got fools in that role. So, you're savvy, right? You read the same Facebook page. You know what's going on out there. You know the sense of the community. You know why they're there. So this is what I recommend on those types of meetings. Your agenda, right? On your agenda. So this is so you might have just a boring old agenda most of the time, but when you know you're going to have that controversial issue, raising water rates, right? Or building a new sewer lagoon. You guys, I won't scrap that scab off. That's not completely healed yet. You've had some, go on that for a while. Yeah, okay. We'll stick with water right now. So you're going to get a room full of people that are all upset, right? So you anticipate this. This is what I recommend you would do. You'd have the agenda item. So it's going to be item number 3 on the agenda, purchase of fire truck, blah, 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 blah. Then the next thing I would suggest you put on the agenda, or on this, it would be presentation by the fire chief. The fire chief, that's the job, her job, get up there and say, all right, our capital improvement plan says we need to rotate out these trucks every 20 years based on usage, blah, 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 blah. The truck we are trying to replace is from 1954. So it's way over its useful life. It doesn't even start, and you are all, our community's at risk, and that is not acceptable for us. We're not doing our duty, or whatever the reasons. This is the reason why. Set the stage. This is the reason why we need a new fire truck. This is the process we've gone through in the procurement process. We have let out bids. We have received bids from 14 different organizations and blah, 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 blah. And this is what we have. These are the prices. This is what we're getting, and we feel this is the best value. This vehicle for this price and this value. And so I recommend to the commission, or the board, to purchase this vehicle. Right? So now you can imagine in the room, they haven't even done public comment yet. Right? Because I don't care what they have to say, because what they're going to say is wrong. Right? Because they think you're buying a ladder truck. So why have that out there and be reinforced? So we're going to say, we're going to give you information first. We're going to tell you the details. Get it all out there. And then you as board members, you say, thank you, Fire Chief. Appreciate your presentation. I got a few questions for you. Now we go in the Q&A phase, where the board's asking the expert, the presenter, questions. So, again, tell me how many bids we got and why did you choose, and have them explain it again. Go through the process. So if you know what the concerns of the public are, ask those questions again. Even if the fire chief clearly explained it, come back and revisit it so they hear it again. They have confidence. It's the same reason why the FBI asks you the same question 6 different ways. If you've ever had that opportunity. I married a daughter of an FBI agent. Yeah. Okay.